Good morning, everyone. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I'd like to welcome you all to the Hilton Doubletree in Center City, Philadelphia, United States. As I try to get everything hooked up to the laptop. To the show laptop. Hello. Hello. The doors are shut. I'm the only one helping, right? Let me see what I can do about the sensitivity on the mic.
Send it to my email.
Okay. Oh,
Um,
and what was the sign in the password? That's what I went out to get and I forgot.
237.
237.
Oh, sorry, what?
FTC 22. Financial gain.
Oh, for the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was asking him for his,
Oh, personal one?
yeah, to access the laptop. Okay, so, um, I have one more. So to put a USB in here. Oh, and Jeff, would you open up your
Yeah.
email? Thank you. I need to add, actually, I can get it out of your presentation. Oh, I can get out of your email. So just let me, show me how to use your email.
Just put that out there.
It
All
was
right, keep going. Right.
this one?
Yeah.
Oh, that's after, okay. And,
You gotta do the Wi-Fi first. Totally do it. Can you stand by the table and I'll do this?
yeah. Oh, the front upside down.
Sure, sure.
Doubletree meeting, I assume?
Yes, sir. Part of that feedback we're getting right now, as you hear, is
Yeah.
because it's an empty room.
Okay.
Once we get some bodies that absorb sound,
FTC 22, you said?
yeah, it should be that.
Says it's valid.
I mean, pretty good. Internet for all attendees is FTC, all caps,
Oh.
22. That could have been it. Oh, for right now, for argument's sake, let's use the main one. Within 2022, year dash, hyphen, internal all over.
Internal.
Just to get you going. We can't waste time anymore.
Can we check on that other one?
Pardon?
Can we check on the other one?
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
Wonderful. Yourself?
I'm well. I'm better when I get to the bottom with a cup of coffee.
Oh. We're gonna need a couple more of these surveys. I just saw him sitting there, and
Appreciate that.
if I don't keep myself busy, I'll fall asleep. We don't want that.
I thought you were
Am I
running the
sitting at
show.
the table the rest of the day?
I thought you were running the show.
Okay.
Need about 5. Waiting for my boss to show up, and it's like, oh, okay.
There you go. Put yourself busy. Where do you work?
Here.
Oh.
How are you doing? This is part of it.
Yeah.
Individual documentation. Free labor.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome to the Doubletree Hilton at Broad and Locust Street. 1, 2, 3. Next to arrive on track 4, section A, the 745 local to Trenton. 1, 2, 3. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Wonderful. We have a live stream on YouTube. Right now we have, so we only see the presenter, so it's only one way. That's on the second laptop. We have laptop sound. We have the laptop at the podium. And next, hearing it won't be a problem. It's, video will go to the screen. We're recording live to YouTube with the second laptop. I can't really know how that all plays the link. This is a Jeff and Shereen question. Honestly, if they're not allowed to change it, we would need. If he wants to see the audience or see you, he can hear you from our setup right now. He just won't be able to. If it's on your screen up there on the podium, it'll get on. Everybody here will see it. You just won't see us. You can hear the questions through YouTube. I don't have a second text to you.
No, he's not gonna, he is only going to go.
I can hook up a microphone to the camera. That's not all. We need to figure out a way to have him hear us and he's not going to be. So right now I only have one next to you. But I need that on the screen. Right. You're going to use the show laptop. You have your PowerPoint. For you to project, we need a source that will have the Zoom software that blank. There. Connector. I can send whatever's coming in, I can send it out.
How, so my laptop.
Okay. Very much it's going to be a constant stream all that. I can send a second batch out. The camera is set up on the podium. We need a probably be moving around.
Okay. No, I'm getting your sense.
I wanted to bring a real camera.
Yeah, no, I understand. So that's what.
You know,
So, and we do, simulcast as well. Yeah, all across that.
thank you.
Jackie, could you help me with this, please?
I'm not totally at the second meeting, so
Okay.
I'll think as well.
Okay.
There isn't a light here, is there?
No.
See, I need to put this in because I emailed Jeff a presentation, but somehow it hasn't come through. And I cannot even see it. It doesn't seem like there is any.
No, there's not.
So then it needs the adjust, it needs the adapter. I don't have an adapter, but that
There's
too.
one here.
There's-
We don't fit it.
There. And moving this around doesn't really.
Good day.
Hello, Mr. Barron.
Good morning.
Have you met Shereen?
Hi, Shereen.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Oh, the only thing I noticed from the stream is maybe having a computer.
Yeah, people keep touching the lid.
Yeah, sorry, that was
Yeah.
me.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
Just
No,
because I
I'm
wanted to
happy.
block the
Thank you.
camera.
I was in the back of the room at the next phone streaming. I could hear it feeding back. So if anybody's streaming in here,
I don't see why anyone would do that,
I don't know, but
but,
I just don't want, I wanted a second idea, like,
well, if that happens, if we, I guess we'll just have to maybe have Shereen make a house, and like, please don't.
well, nobody's gonna get the link but the 10 people she's
Well,
given.
then there you go.
It's a private link,
Right.
Oh,
so you'll have to send the link out.
So the
Everybody
link
needs-
was sent out. Yeah,
Yes.
it should have been sent out.
So they're
Yeah.
good then.
Okay, so we're just gonna stream, leave it on,
Yep, leave it on.
leave it on. Hope it doesn't freeze.
So you keep checking, right?
Yeah, I can keep periodically checking.
Will you be in the room with us?
I will.
You will be, right?
Okay, and I can't be on the stream because it'll cause feedback. to the microphone.
Just let me know if at any point you need me to check it.
The other thing we do is check on fire.
Oh, yeah, I'll check.
I don't know when you're getting here.
You wanna hang here, I'll,
Oh, the code for the attendance.
FTC 22.
Oh, I have that. I'll make an announcement. But yeah, people ask you. Yeah.
Well, we tried it and it didn't work.
Oh, it didn't
Now
work.
it's active.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Now it's active.
So I have a question. Yeah, that one, PC crossing. I just need to open, Autodesk now.
Did you download the?
No, I'm trying to find it. So it's in, shouldn't the desktop, shouldn't this show up on our desktop?
No, it's, you have to go into File Explorer
Oh, okay.
and then go
Okay,
to,
desktop? Oh,
USB
drive,
drive.
yeah. Okay, okay, thank you.
and then you just drag it or copy it.
Yeah. Okay, that. And then-
Yeah,
Yeah.
I told my friend when they asked me if they want to go to Apple after doing Android for so long or Mac PC,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's getting in like a new wife. You have to relearn everything.
A better way.
A better way, yes.
I think so, because it's more user friendly, like it all comes up, it's all, yeah, but yeah, if you're not used to it, it takes time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to these, so I'm just gonna check if everything is on here, it should be on here. My next
Sorry.
one. No, just, no, meaning there's so much going on.
Ah,
Yeah, no, I didn't get enough sleep. Because I went to bed at 10, but I kept getting up. Oh, I don't know.
and my kid kept me up over past midnight.
Oh, doing
He's
what?
11.
Oh.
He was playing his video game. This is school
Oh my
night.
God.
He heard me go to sleep.
So he went.
He got up and
Oh my God. These video games. My number one is 16 now.
I can't have a 16-year-old. I'm not old yet.
And my older one is 18. It's mostly the vendors. Or then he spoke with you, so he's gonna do his phone.
He rang me because I'm like,
Right, so I have basically from 2:55 to, so basically just before 3 to 4:30, I have everybody switching laptops.
oh, okay.
Yeah. So we'll manage. Yeah. Okay, great. Just make sure that and the position is.
It's, yeah. We got to turn these microphones back on so the audience can hear us. So you know they're getting something.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you today?
Good. I'm gonna just be speaking. I just wanted to come in and see the room real quick.
Shereen.
Hi, Sheree.
Hi, Mike. Welcome. Nice to meet you. Not at all.
Forward to it.
Likewise.
So,
So that's you. Yeah, I was just making sure that the password and all that was okay. Yeah. So I'm not used to using a PC, so I'm just
You have to go far left of the mouse pad.
oh, one more.
Keeping right.
Okay. This one, right? Okay.
and
Yeah,
then,
two buttons.
I guess 9:15, right? is what I got.
You go on at 9:15. That's right. So we have a panel before that, and so you would be up here
Speaking from the podium.
from the podium. We have a lav, right? If you want to move around, but the problem is we are live streaming it, so we would kind of prefer you to be behind the podium if that's okay with you.
I'll just bounce up and down.
Yeah, that's okay. Don't worry. It's a very small live streaming audience.
I'll
So
use my hands. Okay. that's fine.
okay, so we're all set here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have a remote, so like if you did this, you'd see yourself. You'd actually be in great shape.
Okay. I can see my slides on the.
And
Okay.
you can see your slides and if you have notes or anything. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Not at all. Likewise, did you get some coffee and breakfast?
go
Yeah.
right now.
Okay, great. Perfect. Hey, Kristen.
Just one.
Good, good.
Okay, Kristen, you
Sounds
want
like you should run a little tutorial before everything
Well, I'm
starts.
still learning. I'm not a
As long as I don't
PC
trip up
person.
the
So yeah, I
stairs.
know.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got to
you'll
watch
be
out for
okay.
that. Okay, so you are MetLife. Okay, so you're right here. I'm gonna just open up your presentation so that you take a look. There you go, open. So essentially, you're going to be here. They're live streaming this.
Okay.
So I think they kind of want you in this area, but you have a remote. If you stand this way, you're good to go. Right? You can be
Okay.
at the podium. You can
Yeah.
move in this area. Just don't fall off the stage.
Don't fall off the
Yeah, and then you
stage.
can move that. This is just
It's fine. And I can slideshow.
okay. Got it? Oh, there.
Okay, great. So then I can actually see
And then you can
notes
use
on
the
here.
yeah. Is it on? There's a sign.
Switch on the console.
Tom.
It might need.
Or maybe you turn it off. Yeah, the light is on. Once the green light is on. No, you have to point it at the laptop.
Shouldn't
I did it I did it yesterday and it worked.
Is that the, or is it?
A little muddy.
That's weird. I did it This one perfectly.
Is the laser pointer working?
No. That's good.
Yeah, the laser pointer is working.
The laser is. Oh, you're right. No, and I did it yesterday. And it was fine.
Let's unplug it and replug it.
The battery's on.
Well, hang on,
Well, I mean, the worst case you'd have to use this, but I'd hate that.
but
Or to move the slides? Yeah. Is that moving?
no.
That's bizarre. Should we?
Oh, it's
Oh,
moving
it
up
moved.
there.
So when I use this, it
Okay,
moves.
hang on. But it didn't move on
Oh,
here.
so you know what? How about? Does that make a difference? No, it's the same thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
that's
just
bizarre.
start.
Should
over.
we
Why
start
is
over?
this-
Yeah. Wait, let me move
let's
my.
take- yeah, sorry.
No, no. Let me check.
From the beginning. Yeah, look at that. It's moving up there.
Let's try to unselect the slide.
Huh.
One thing is to shut the whole thing down and
Let's not kill the presentation, but let's kill the view. So hit the escape button. All right, now let's hit this button here. Oh, it's a different window.
Yes, yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. All right, let's see. So this thing still isn't advancing, but I can do it from the computer. I mean, it would still be really nice to have a clicker.
All right, let me see if I can work some magic. Let's unplug the USB portion of the mouse. Laser pointer is working. Oh, that's why.
Oh.
The wrong clicker.
I wonder what that one's for.
Probably Wi-Fi.
You're falling off the stage. There we go. Okay. The smartest man in the room right now.
Oh, I just have the chance to figure it out. Yeah. All right.
All right, super. Thank you. All right, it's working.
Oh, it's working now?
It is working.
Figured it out. Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thank you.
One of your peers is here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your Curtis and,
Oh, right. Did you get a chance to see how you were?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I came in.
Okay, so I better take a quick look.
All right, so
I
let's.
didn't realize you'd be stuck behind a podium.
Yeah.
But that's okay. And then the click. So when you get up, do you have to click on your own?
I don't know, I think they set it up for you.
All right. Oh, that's not working. Okay. That's not.
She had
Oh, there you go.
had them all set up, so.
Oh, she does. Okay. I don't want to mess around. Let's see it. Let's see pieces. I'm sure she'll figure it out for us. Oh, there it is. There's pieces.
There you
There it
go.
is.
I apologize too. Our global information security team like keeps flagging things when I tried to send it out to you, and I could not get a clean file, but you'll get the file.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. No big deal. Like I said, it was more just for handoff, but I'm so interested in your session today about the data analytics side.
They see
Yeah.
how many tidbits I can share, and if it's not enough, call me.
Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Good.
We're trying to soak up some extra caffeine.
Okay. Go for it. Let's see what we got.
You teasing out me already.
I did. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, America, beginning of it all.
It did. It started with that. All right. Let's.
Oh, they forgot me.
That's it? Okay. And the volume wise, it's okay? I'm not too loud or too soft? Oh, I am? Okay. Because I tend to be loud. At least that's what my boys tell me. So they're like, Mom, you're shouting. So I'm trying to be a little louder. Okay. 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 Fine.
We are live streaming on finetraining.com.
And then if I need to remove my USB,
Right click,
right click on.
there's the up arrow there next to the cloud
The what?
on the right. Oh, over by the clock.
Huh?
Over by the clock.
Over by the clock. Okay.
There's an up arrow.
Where's the clock?
There's the clock. And
Okay.
the up
Oh,
arrow.
this up arrow. Okay.
Right click. Oops,
Okay.
I moved the mouse. And then
Okay. And then there you go. Eject.
save to eject. Alright, we had the wrong dongle in.
Okay.
I don't know
That's
what that
it-
little one was.
I
but
was wondering about that too.
Maybe it was your Wi-Fi for home.
I don't know. It's Jeff's laptop and
Ah.
it's new for him too. Because they asked me to use mine and I didn't want to use mine.
Alright, I'll keep this handy. So we
This
don't lose
is
it.
okay. That's yours. Okay, that's his.
Yeah. Yeah, this one's
Should
got
we
a
just-
dongle that hides in this little hole.
Oh, okay, that's what it is. Okay, okay, got it.
So
Okay, so let me put this away. I'm gonna leave my speech here, and I hope you can't use Jeff.
Good morning. Good morning. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three, four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Next to arrive. I gotta turn that one up. Number. Good morning, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Welcome to the Doubletree Hilton at Broad and Locust.
Yeah, you know what, it's a panel, there's no first presentation, so I guess.
Good morning. Wonderful. Yourself?
Awesome.
That's great.
You, setting up for a presentation or?
I'm with the audiovisual department, so I'm
Okay,
just
great.
making sure everything is peachy keen.
Yeah, or star conference people.
They won't pay me to do that. I'm in
It's
the
funny how
background.
that works. Good stuff.
Evidently, we're having a panel in the first session.
Yes, sir. Panel set up. I'm kicking off in a few minutes.
I mean, it doesn't make chicken scratch on it, so, as long as it's not for everybody else. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. 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 Right, yeah. You're playing on your phone. Right. It's always me, you know, just to make sure you know. Yeah.
The presenters will present from here. We have the live streaming going on.
Okay.
So yeah, so this was the best they could do. So
So there's a video there.
there's a video there.
Okay. Nice. Cameras right here.
Yeah, there's cameras. So for some reason they put it on the presenter,
Okay.
not on the presentation. But I think the virtual attendees will have the presentations. It's a small number.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You're
You're
for the
okay?
panels or what's the option for the video on the
Oh
panel?
yeah, that's a good question. Let me ask.
What if we can flip over?
We
Yeah.
could flip it. Gary? 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 And then, so just tell me.
Absolutely. Are you, so I mean, Chairman Welcome and
Right?
exactly.
Quick question. This is Curtis.
Hey.
Pleasure.
And, he's the chair of our conference, so he'll be running the show for the next day and a half. So we have a panel after after the introduction. We'll be able to move the laptop to face the panelists.
Well, we have to move the camera.
I mean, the camera, so could we, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, we have a control here. Just that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's not.
Just, we can, directional pad,
Mm-hmm.
and you can watch the screen for what's being projected.
All right, great.
I didn't want to move it ahead of time.
Right, right. Okay,
The
so,
announcements and.
Perfect. All right, that's easy.
I think all sort of the air conditioner.
yeah. When I saw Curtis, I was like, yeah, actually.
Yeah.
All right, there's also a zoom function in case increase, you get closer and then back up.
Okay.
We're gonna go full way in the
Feature
future.
option, okay.
Will you be able to handle it or do you want me
Yeah,
to come up and do
I
it?
should be able to handle that. If you see me if you're struggling to go.
I mean, it'll be very quick, because I'll start and you can come up in a couple of minutes.
Should be able
See
to.
Curtis, yeah.
Okay,
No problem. I'm good with that.
Okay, yeah.
okay.
But if you see me waving at you.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. These all get settled in, right?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that fine with you?
I didn't know if you wanted to call us up. Hi! Nice to meet you in the flesh.
Right, I said.
How are you? Nice to meet you too.
I'm sorry, I cut your bundle.
I know, and you already
I'm
remember.
happy to read it.
Exactly.
See that? So the Jeff outside. No, I thought I loved you. Okay.
That's just more of a.
No, I know, I just wanted to.
Two cents.
Hey, Susie, come up, yeah. Hi, Curtis.
So do you, and
Maybe
then
just
when you
one.
came on, I don't know if you've been at conferences or
Yeah, a lot of people talk to me. and say, I didn't know you're right.
else. Right, they don't have that face.
Yeah. it's
I
like
am.
that.
Share a mic.
Yeah, this will work. We'll figure it out.
I just tried on a yellow top like that last night, except it was sleeveless, and I was gonna wear it.
This is the first, I'm up for the first one, right? Yes.
Should
we're
have
the first one. We're gonna
coordinated.
have a-
That would look
Kick
cool
off.
with blanket.
Excuse me, sorry.
Hi.
Good morning. How are
Morning,
you?
good.
I'm Bernie.
Jamie.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi,
too.
Bernie. Nice to meet you. Oh, good. They reprinted the.
Very official.
Exactly.
You must be somebody.
Yeah.
Yes, I know. I'm pinch hitting.
Yeah.
At least I think they still have the other guy's name on their side too.
Good morning, everybody. We okay with the sound? On behalf of Strategic Solutions Network, I'd like to welcome you to our 20th Financial Services Learning and Talent Innovations Conference. My name is Shireen Kanga, and I will be your host for the next day and a half of this event. If you need any help, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to my colleague Jeffrey Maurer, who is outside at the registration desk. I'd like to start off by extending a very warm welcome and a big thank you to all of our sponsors, GP Strategies, Kaltura, TTC Innovations, LearnNexus, Learning Pool, Aptara, Beyond, and SS&C. As you already have visited their booths, I encourage you to spend some time during the breaks to talk to them. They've put together a lot of interesting and valuable information. Also, very importantly, on the table in front of you, we have these green conference evaluation forms. As we move along, if you could take the time to just jot down your feedback and your comments. I provide this feedback to the presenters, and we really try to do everything we can to take your ideas and your feedback when we craft the next conference. Also, if you'd like to participate as a speaker, please do reach out to me. Lunch will be served in the Ormondy East Room next door. Restrooms are located in the foyer to the right of the registration desk. And at the end of today, after the last presentation at 5:30, we have a cocktail reception next door. So please do join us. It'll be a nice time to relax and to get to network with your conference peers. If you don't already have it, the Wi-Fi code for the room is FTC 22. That's F as in Financial Training Conference 22. And the speaker presentations for the conference will be made available to you within a week after the conference. So I will send out an email with a link, and you can access it off our conference website. I believe the information is also on your program guide. And I'd like to extend a big thank you to our Conference Board of Advisors for their support and their presence and participation. Curtis Twombly with Wells Fargo, Joy Joseph with Liberty Mutual, I think she's on her way, Camaria Scott with Accenture, Bernie Goldstein with JP Morgan Chase, Matt Patria from Vanguard, who's also on his way, and Patty Aquaro, who's with us virtually, formerly with Mellon BNY. So thank you. One more thank you to our panel moderators. They've put in a lot of time and effort and energy into preparing these very interesting and informative panels that I hope you'll join in. Curtis Twombly, David Gurulnik, and Bill Kennelly. Thank you. And now I'd like to kick off the conference with an introduction to our seasoned conference chair, Curtis. Curtis is the Education Compliance Manager at Wells Fargo Advisors, and he's been with our conference for over a decade. And he brings to us a great deal of wealth in terms of his experience and expertise. He's a proven performance consultant and a senior learning leader with over 25 years of experience in the financial services industry. He's worked during the course of his career at Charles Schwab, Wachovia Securities, and now at Wells Fargo. So Curtis, I'm going to hand over to you. Welcome and thank you.
Awesome. And then certainly a extra round of applause. I can't imagine trying to schedule a conference at the end of a pandemic or during, however you want to define where we're at today. So that extra challenging. So thank you, Shireen, and the partners here. So good morning, everybody. And first of all, I have a riddle for you. So what do you call a blind dinosaur? Do you think he saw us? There you go. Got lots. Oh, wait, this is not a Boy Scout meeting. Never mind. I'm sorry. So as a Boy Scout leader, I have lots of those really sad dad jokes, and I'll try to limit those for the weekend, excuse me. It's not a camp out either. So it's great to be in person. It's great to be in front of colleagues, many colleagues I haven't seen for 2 or 3 years in person. And obviously lots of new faces in the room that I'm excited to meet. So thank you very much for the introduction. And really this role, I enjoy doing this role because it helps me stay engaged. It helps me get to know the presenters. It gives me an opportunity to sort of continue using some of my skills that I've honed over the years. So sure, I'm a compliance person, and I'm sure I could bore you guys to tears on, anti-tying rules, Reg W, talk about the control structure and proper way to effectively test and validate and audit. But that would make everybody fall asleep by about 8:20. So we're going to skip that part. Instead, though, I do want to just provide some thoughts. So I've actually attended, I think, about 15 of these 20 conferences that have been offered. And I really like this forum. I like the program. And what I like especially well about the program is the fact that the people that you're going to hear from, the people you're going to meet, are colleagues just like each of you. We're all sort of struggling and challenging and working on opportunities and innovations similar to yours within your company. And while we all have unique products and services and offerings and maybe located in different places, there is a lot of common ground. And I think you'll find value in that. So I definitely enjoyed that, have received a lot of value, have been able to apply it in my personal life as well as my work, career life, and networking. So some top five things I want to suggest on how to best sort of take from this conference information and benefit you personally. So first of all, one thing that's always helped me is that I right away create an action list somewhere in my notes that I can take back. Because I don't know about you, it's like every presentation, there's usually a couple ideas that come out and I'm like, oh, that sounds great. But I can't go back and act on them all. I can't go back and share them all. So I do try to keep in the back of my notes a list of sort of the top 5 things that no matter what, I'm going to do some kind of action on. Somebody I'm going to reach out to, something I'm going to share with my team, something I'm going to do research on myself. So definitely encourage you to do something like that, something you can make this real, tangible. So that's a suggestion. 2, similarly, maybe on the page right after it, is a sharing list. So what is the things that you can share with your team, with your partners, with colleagues of yours that you might find value? Because there'll be presentations on things like talent development, and maybe I'm not necessarily working on talent development. I have colleagues that are, and there's a great connection here that you might be able to introduce them to. So again, an opportunity to get value out of this time you're spending. 3 is my 3 takeaway thing I've learned is just take advantage of the time that we're not in the room. So when there are breaks, when there's a lunch period, where there's a networking reception, take that time to get to know colleagues. And I know it's very alluring to jump on your work phone or look at email, maybe get on a call. That you can find other ways to manage that. That time in between is definitely precious from a networking standpoint. Number 4 is get to know the sponsors. I'm in a position with my company where I don't really have a lot of sort of purchasing decision making on vendors and strategic partners, but I found it really valuable to just get to know some of the sponsors, find out what they're doing, have an opportunity to see some of the presentations they brought. They're oftentimes working with industry leaders. They're doing cutting edge stuff that many of you may not have time or investment to go and do. So this is a great opportunity to get to know that. So, and they're usually great people, very engaging folks. And number 5, I encourage each and every one of you to be what I call hyper engaged. I tend to be, it's a word I've coined for myself. When I tend to join meetings and be engaged in sessions, I tend to be really try to sit at the edge of my seat, try to understand the conversation, try to have a question prepared if there's an opportunity to ask a question, have an opportunity to contribute, and in a way that's not hopefully too annoying. But anyway, I definitely welcome you and encourage you all to be hyper engaged. So those are the top 5 things that I would suggest to you. Take any one of those or all of them. But those are things that have helped me make the best out of this time. So with that said, we're going to transition to the conference. And the first thing we have is kicking off a head of learning panel. So we have a 4th panelist that's not on the list. Bernie joined us. Thank you, Bernie. So 4 awesome learning and development leaders, various backgrounds and experiences from large companies to smaller companies. I think you're going to find this next time with this, I think 45 minutes or so, to be really engaging. And we're going to I have a few questions that I've put together based on conversations I've had with our panelists. And then from there, we're going to make sure we weave in opportunities for you to ask questions. So, and then Shrina, do we have a microphone for questions or? Okay, great. Awesome. So thank you. So we'll have that ready to go. And I'll make sure to try and pause somewhere in the time to do that. All right. With that, one thing we do have, which you may not know, is we have actually a few people live streaming. So a couple of people participating online. And we have a video up here. So I'm going to take a moment to move the video so it's over here to the panel. And oh, there it is. Got the little doohickey, is the technical term. And this is if it was right. Okay, almost got it. Doesn't look like it goes all the way over, but I'm going to manually. Okay, I think we can see the panelists. All right. Wonderful. Welcome. All right, awesome. And we're sharing microphones.
Yes, you go ahead.
Yeah. All right, so we're sharing some microphones. This is Relay testing.
You're good.
Wonderful. So this is the Heads of Learning panel. And just to set this up, thank you. Awesome. So just to set this up, we really, the conversation and dialogue here is really shaped by the experiences and background of our 4 panelists. And my job is just to facilitate and ask questions. So one of the themes that as we were starting to talk is certainly a big theme for this group was just managing through and leading through hybrid experience, hybrid model. And we have some great questions around that. But to get us kicked off, I want to give you a chance to meet each of our panelists. So I'm going to ask them to provide kind of name, background, talk about your current role, and then summarize some of your areas of focus with your organization. Would you like to get us started?
Sure. Susie Kelso. I'm currently with Bank Midwest. We're in Iowa, Minnesota, and South Dakota. Flyover country for a lot of you. I live in a resort area in Iowa. Yes, we have resorts. It is a lake. It is a glacial lake with an amusement park and a concert venue. And Melissa Etheridge is coming pretty soon to perform out there. So there, it's Iowa. It's called Okoboji. If you want to Google it, there's some cool videos on it. But anyway, that's where I originate. I started out teaching 7th and 8th graders in coaching, and a lot of sympathy goes out to me for that. And then I moved on to higher ed, and I was a graduate professor in leadership, and then went on to become a dean of education, academic vice president. I was at a golf tournament. President of a bank asked me, any chance you'd leave higher ed and come and be our learning development person? I thought, banking. That's people are always worried when they hear I'm in banking because they think I have something to do with their money. But I thought about it. It got me back home to that area I just described. And so I've been there since 2014. We have initiatives around everyone learning people skills and fierce conversations, not just the leadership group, but every company employee. And that was at the direction of our company owner. And he wanted all people trained like leaders. It's what attracted me away from a really cool job to do this. I thought this is an innovative place. They're treating everyone and training everyone like leaders. So I'm in my 8th year there now and just really enjoying it.
Thanks, Susie.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Jackson, and I work at MetLife Insurance Company. I'm based in the Cary, North Carolina area, and I hail from Chicago. I was there most of my, did I hear a woo woo? All right. I spent most of my life there. I was born there and worked at Northern Trust Company, which is big in Chicago. And I started in hedge fund administration. So my background is in finance and on the hedge fund side. And after I did that for a while, we acquired another company overseas. And I had the opportunity to move over to Dublin and in Ireland. And going through that process of seeing people be acquired by a big American company and how do we adjust and people leaving because of the culture made me really open my eyes to the whole field of human resources. So that's when I started to move over from the financial service or from hedge fund administration over into HR and into learning. So I started in learning and development back in the early 2000s and have been with MetLife now for almost 8 years and heading, I used to head our enterprise learning development for all 45,000 of our associates. We're in over 40 countries. We deliver training in over 20 languages in some cases. And I've recently, in the last year and a half, moved over to lead our leadership development for MetLife. So exciting work there. We have over 5,000 leaders across the globe, and determining how we create a consistent and positive experience for all of our employees through their leadership. So pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
Hi, Jamie DiGirolamo. I joined from NBC Universal, been there for a couple weeks now, actually, after 10 years in management consulting at Boston Consulting Group. I actually just passed the Philadelphia office on the way here and brought back some fond memories when I was going down Market Street. Recently made the change after most of the time at BCG in the learning space, and then towards the end of my tenure there into career development, mostly training the senior client leadership facing consulting staff, but also servicing the Northeast as far as learning business needs as a learning business partner. So now at NBCU, actually, and it is extremely new, so still getting to know what my responsibilities will be moving forward, but mostly training those from individual contributor levels up to senior VPs on all things related to financials, getting the financial basis and fundamentals as far as each business unit, and then also getting them upskilled on streaming, since that is the newest and greatest venture, and it's not even that long that streaming has been part of NBCU's portfolio as far as when Peacock was added last year, or the year before. Yes. So getting them upskilled in that. And I think the greatest priority right now is determining whether to, and again, I know it's a challenge for most companies in terms of hybrid working, but our learning programs, whether or not they are hybrid or fully back in person, that is definitely the biggest challenge that we are encountering at this point. So excited to dive in and get to know all of you and connect later as well over the other sessions and lunch. So looking forward to it.
Good morning, Bernie Goldstein with JP Morgan Chase. Live in New York, just up the road from Philadelphia, although Iowa seems like a better place to have been during the pandemic, at least. It sounds wonderful to be out on that lake, with Zoom and your Zoom background, so that's great. And congrats on the new job, so it's exciting. So I am responsible for 2 teams within our training group within Asset and Wealth Management at JP Morgan. One is focused on client skills training, so working with our client-facing professionals who are really the advisor's advisor, whether that's large institutions, public pension plans, or financial advisors at a variety of firms. I'm also now responsible for our Python Innovation Solutions Center, which is all about taking the Python coding language and thinking about automating a lot of the work that we do. And really, I think of it as more thinking about the future of work and what we want our people doing and how we want them in a mindset of solving challenges. So started off as a financial advisor myself, and I think I got into training ultimately because subconsciously I realized that the training I was getting was not exactly what I needed, as an advisor, and I thought we could do better, particularly by not only focusing on the skill set, but the mindset and the emotional intelligence piece as well, which is why I became certified executive coach. And I think it's so important. It's such a huge mess when we send people out to talk about the most important topics with their clients, and we don't focus on their mindset. We don't focus on their emotional intelligence. And so for my team, coaching, whether it's our next generation talent or teams that are going into big meetings or presentations with clients, coaching is a big focus. It really cuts across all of our initiatives, plus, sustainability and productivity are also really important topics for us as well. So look forward to talking with all the panelists and getting into the conference. Back to you, Curtis.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Awesome panelists. Thank you. So to kick things off, I definitely want to focus on that, sort of something that's timely relevant to all of us, and that's sort of this hybrid environment that I'm assuming most of us, if not all of us, are currently finding ourselves in. And some of us who manage or work in a banking environment, retail bank, there probably wasn't much of a hybrid time for a hybrid, but those of us in more of a corporate setting, certainly there is. But each of us have had to work through challenges, and I'm sure we've had successes and further opportunities to keep honing that. So we're going to go around and dig into this topic a little bit with our panelists. And Jamie, I'd love to start with you, and you brought it up. And also this term that came up when we discussed this hybrid equity, this concept, and maybe you'll talk a little bit about that too and get everybody's opinion on that.
Sure,
Right.
absolutely. So I think that we should talk about this term hybrid equity, if you've heard it or not, is as far as in general at a macro level in the workplace, and then as it relates to learning. I think the pandemic obviously changed so many of us in all different ways and for all different reasons, and really forced us to take a look at what we want out of our careers, where we want to go. It was a lot of home time to reflect, obviously. I think we're all still feeling the effects of that trauma of the last 2 years. But it definitely, it forced the conversation, right, around what we want out of our jobs. And I think that the conversation changed from how do I make work actually a part of my life, and then it shifted from, I'm sorry, I'm messing up what I want to say. What do we want out of our careers, and then how do I fit my life into my work, to how do I fit my life into my work, and how does my life fit into my work? I wrote that down twice. Yes. So it's very much employees have the power now, whether we want to admit it or not. And I remember being in the performance review process when I was at BCG. We were doing performance evaluation for a team that the majority of the folks were actually remote, but a few of them were in person. And one of the senior MD managing director partners said, well, I had a conversation with this person and the client when we were in the room, and he said X, Y, Z, and it wasn't really the best look for them. And I kind of sat there and I said to him, would this conversation be happening right now, us evaluating this person based on that interaction, if this person was remote? No, it wouldn't, just because it was an in-person interaction. So this idea of making sure it's a level playing field for folks who are remote and in person, I think is just definitely the challenge as we come back to the working models, et cetera. And then in the next bucket is, as far as hybrid learning, I think the companies have experimented with different ways of putting learning productions together. It takes a lot more horsepower to produce hybrid events. I know this because last year, the first in-person event was hybrid that I actually coordinated. There were 100 people in person and 50 online for 3 or 4 days, and it was exhausting. And those of you who have done that know that it just takes a lot more energy to make sure that you are on time, that the virtual participants are on, the in-person folks are where they need to be, et cetera. It's like double time. We had to hire a production crew of about 20 people to manage the event when we would normally get away with 5 or 6. So it definitely takes a lot. And I think that with the mixed attendance within the office, there's a little more emphasis on learning programs now with the lesser interactions that would normally happen organically. So I feel that pressure, and I'm sure most of you do as well as learning professionals, that kind of have to amp up those experiences in person. There's more pressure for the affiliation aspect because they're not getting that more, otherwise. So I think that it's just an interesting time. I think the rest of this year, companies are going to learn what works for them, and some are more forceful than others. And I think of Apple as an example, when their employees basically went on strike when they were told to come back to the office last year. And I think it actually happened again recently, last month. So I think companies need to be very thoughtful and moving forward. And they're going to experiment and find out what works the rest of this year and likely into next year. But it's a really interesting and unprecedented time. And I'm curious to hear if my other panelists actually have experienced that as well.
We'll come this way and loop back around and pretty help with that. So thank you very much, Jamie.
Yeah.
Kirsten, what's your experience with that?
Very, very interesting. And at MetLife, we're hybrid, at least in the US. It's 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. I think we're in week 6 of that right now. But being in different countries, it really just depends on what's happening.
Mhm.
So it's not like we can just take a stance for the entire company that, no, we're hybrid or we're virtual or we're in office. So we're really taking a stance of virtual first, right? Of everything that we're doing, we think about, and not just learning, but everything that we do, we're thinking about that virtual employee first, making sure that they have the equity to the people who are in the room, and then think about the people who are sitting there. So ensuring that they can see everybody who is sitting in the room and that they can hear them, and really giving them that equity.
Right, I like that equity or virtual first. I like that. Thank you, Susie. Turning your microphone.
I had a chance to teach for the Graduate School of Banking out of Boulder, and there are 90 people in each section of Intro to Leadership that I teach. This past year, they wanted to have it, so we had 70 of them in person, 20 coming in virtually. It wasn't done well. And it wasn't done well because they have these engaged people where you can see their faces, you can see their reactions, and it was hard for me to even remember that those 20 people were there. And so I've tried to find ways to start out to learn their names, and if I saw someone up there, try to engage them. But we had 90 minutes, 5 days, and it was just, I feel like their experience probably was less than. And so I don't know, I talked with people who have solutions that are set up over there that may be able to help us with better, but the whole point to me was engagement. And I'm just a fanatic on be here, prepared to be nowhere else. It's one of our ground rules. It's technological sidebars. And I got into trouble because 3 people out of 180 said, I want to take notes on my computer. Well, I've been in those other classes when people have their laptops up. And I can tell you, they're playing Words with Friends. They're checking their email.
Wordle. Yeah.
Wordle. I love Wordle. I got unlimited Wordle. Anyway, so I have become a bit of a fanatic on engaging and expectations. I think we have to expect more. We had one person, it was just a camera looking at a chair. It's like, not even, won't you turn your camera on? Where are you? You know, it's like, you're not even physically sitting there, but your camera's on. So I would say that we need help with this. We need help, especially when we're doing this blended type of thing, because you can really hit it hard when they're all virtual. You can plan that, do breakout rooms, do the polls, do all those annotations, work all that in. But when part of them are sitting out there virtually and then like working with you here and then having 20 people, those people are probably saying, what, are you at your desk right now? Get back there. Anyway, I think that having some higher expectations, setting ground rules and saying we have to go up a notch in terms of what we expect in terms of people's engagement and behavior and just civil behavior as far as showing up and being engaged. I'll tell them, give me 90 minutes. Those 3 people, I I don't worry about that. As a matter of fact, in leadership program, I told them sometimes as a leader, you make tough decisions and say, when we meet, you put your technology away. When we meet, you're here, you're engaged, and don't tell me you're taking notes, because I know some of you do. But here's the other aspect of that. When somebody argues with you, oh, I'm taking notes, you're banging on your keyboard isn't good for the people around you. So it's rude, I think. So raising the standard, expecting more, and somebody will say, and maybe you'll ask this afterwards, yeah, but what if it's really important? Something big came up, then leave. If it's big enough to sidebar technologically, it's important enough for you to step out. Because the message it sends to the people looking at you from the front is whatever's on here is more important than what you're saying. So I think raising the standards, I know I need help on engagement, and I'm going to talk to people about that, and I hope some of you will share with me what you do.
Great. Thanks, Susie. And the one thing that stood out for me is that a lot of our students, like us, we're all products of public schools or private school, perhaps, where you sat in front of a teacher and you learned over the years how to behave in a classroom, right? From teachers telling, like Mrs. Smith saying, Curtis, sit still. All right, I'm sorry, I was channeling. And but here we have people engaging virtually and for the first time. So they're learning, they don't know how to do it well. And I think that's a great reminder, Susie, that you've got to be clear on what those expectations are. So awesome. Bernie, come back over to you.
Yeah, I think, as much as it's impacted learning, and similar to your situation, we had somebody who was like, it was like a 300-person Zoom class. They were on page like 12. They had taken a picture of themselves sort of sitting there like this, and that was their lock screen. So
that's awesome.
It didn't take us long to figure out that they were sort of sitting there pretending to look engaged. But in all seriousness, right, like as much as this has disrupted the learning space, it's disrupted our businesses as well, right? And in March of 2020, you sort of had to confront, how do you deal with the fact that the doors of your clients are closed to you, right, physically, but you have to figure out a way to engage them. And, I think that disruption made a lot of what we were already doing around client engagement, which was always important and people were engaging. It became that much more urgent because now they had to learn the technology and they also had to learn how to engage the clients over the technology. And so, you never want to waste a crisis. So I think as painful as this has been for all of us, in a lot of ways, there's been a lot of lessons learned. I mean, for my team, we went from like almost 95% in-person training on the client skills side to completely virtual, to now working what actually worked better in a virtual environment and what do we need to bring back in person. Elliot Mazie, who I'm sure a lot of you know, he was recently at a talk he gave, and one of the questions he said everybody should be asking themselves right now in learning, which we probably should have been asking ourselves forever, right? Since the first classrooms, is like, if we are together, what's the point of being together? And really like interrogating that question, because we've proven that we can do it online as well. And there are some things that work better online. And, I think to your point, right, hybrid equity, I think it's important to acknowledge, right, that the pandemic has sort of exposed all the different ways that, inequality afflicts our society and the way it impacts people as a whole, right? You see the inequality in how people had to work during the pandemic. Certainly all the work that continued, obviously it started long before the past 2 years, but all the work that was really a big focus in terms of racial equity during the pandemic. One of the big moments for me is I was coaching a team that was going in to talk to a big healthcare system in Oakland, California. And, this was right in the summer of 2021. So you sort of had a lot of the protests around the murder of George Floyd and racial equity. You had the pandemic raging, and here you are going to talk to this hospital system. And you can't sort of do the like usual, hi, Bernie Goldstein, I'm from this firm, been here X number of years. Like, how do you open that up and really think about connecting with your client and what they're going through? And literally, an hour before the presentation, we changed like the whole opening, and the person had like 60 seconds to do that, right? To express the empathy and the human connection that I think is really required, whether you're over Zoom or in person. So those are some of the things I think we're facing. And now with the hybrid piece, we also have return to office, like Kristen talked about, and that's exposing all sorts of new challenges around equity in terms of who has to come in, how often, and why, and what are we asking them to do, and how do you manage things around COVID and economic equality. So these are a lot of the things that we need to be extra thoughtful about as we're thinking about, sort of like the quote unquote return to wherever it is we were in March of 2020.
Yes. Will we ever return? But yes. Great. That's awesome. And as we had this hybrid discussion, I kept thinking about over the years, the conversations we've had about training in a global environment, some of the challenges and obstacles there. And I'm just curious, it seems to me like there might be some parallels and differences, right, with managing programs that are more global versus now dealing with kind of more of a hybrid setting. And so I'm curious, of our panels that have experience or working through that, anything stand out for you that you've worked on that, and Kristen, I don't know if it's your current role global. I know your previous role was. You want to kick it off and anything you'd share there?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned, MetLife, large global company, and I work in what I call the center. So for leadership development or for workforce development, we're developing content that we believe benefits everyone, right? Whether it's all leaders globally or all of our associates globally. And providing that consistency, I think, no matter whether it's hybrid or in person or virtual, is critical. But we need to also allow for cultural nuances. And I'll just share a quick example of that. So I mentioned that I had lived in Dublin for a while, and when I set up my office there, I was missing drawers, right? Like I had my desk, but I didn't have a set of drawers. So I called the facilities and I said, what do I need to do to get some drawers? Now, does anybody know what drawers means in the UK and Ireland? It's not the little drawers that we're used to. It's an undergarment. So that was a running joke for the entire time that I was there, that I was missing my drawers. So you need to allow for these cultural nuances, right? Like if something doesn't work in your specific country or region or line of business, to allow for that localization. Because what matters at the end of the day isn't only that consistency, but the application. How are people actually taking what we're giving them and applying it and making them a better employee is what really matters. So we need to allow for that process to take place.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. And Bernie, I'm guessing your JP Morgan program and your background, you've got a perspective on global programs. What would you add?
Yeah, I was in London a couple of weeks ago. We were doing a program around Python with our associates, and it was the first time all of them were together. And I think, you could definitely see the change in energy and bringing people together. And just, we did this exercise on origin stories, and to hear some of those from, a global perspective, I think really made a huge difference and reminded you of the importance of the connectivity. But I think Zoom has also been a good levelizer in some ways. Like all of our Python courses are taught, through a virtual environment. And so that allows us to reach a global audience. At the same time, many of the things that were a problem before the pandemic still haven't gone away, right? Like I remember, hearing from a lot of colleagues the last time I was in Hong Kong and Taiwan and Tokyo, sort of saying, look, like we get on these calls with New York at like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, and it's just like people screaming at each other, like there's no meeting agenda, like why are we here, why are we up? And so, it also, I think, has made everybody more sensitive to that, because to the point it was made earlier, right, like your work came into your home. And so I think everybody became more sensitized to our colleagues outside of North America who actually, even long before the pandemic, had been bringing a lot of their work home with them or staying late at the office. So it sort of gave everybody that experience of not being completely aligned to the time zone, which I think was an important learning from the pandemic as well. And I think the final piece is like, globally, it's really disrupted this apprenticeship model that we really value at our company culturally. Because, when people started coming back, it was just the junior people who were coming back at first. And, how do you really make sure that you have some kind of return to in-person culture, especially for the people who are expecting to learn alongside the desk from other people? That's really important to our culture. And that's probably the hardest thing to replicate over Zoom. And you really have to think carefully about how we bring that back. So, I think globally, it had a bit of a levelizing effect. I think there were some good lessons learned that hopefully will continue as we go into the hybrid environment.
Awesome. Thank you. And checking in with Jamie or Susie, anything you'd add from your perspective? And I'm sure in Iowa, there might not be a lot of opportunities to connect globally.
Right. I guess the one thing I would say about the hybrid is if we could think of it less as we used to, which is leaving work to learn and embedding learning within work, doing more micro kinds of things, and then finding ways to maybe use hybrid with a group. So say we do a certain training, we do hybrid some days with them in person, some days electronically, and build that into what we're doing. So it's a blended, genuine blended, not just not with the people blended, but with the day one face-to-face, day two online or virtual or on Zoom, and then day three, so that we can find some way to maybe access all of that and use learning and blending learning in terms of delivery as well.
That's great. I like that. Jamie.
Yeah, I think designing for if you're going to keep a program virtual, designing for a virtual program. Because I know what happened at BCG, when the pandemic hit, we basically just took our live programs and put them on Zoom, which does not work. Oh my God. We used to have an Excel program, a full day Excel program, and it was brutal enough when it was in person, even if you have an engaging facilitator. But put that on Zoom, these people were like, I'm dying. I cannot do any more Excel on Zoom anymore. I don't have a second external monitor. I'm trying to follow along and I can't do it. So that really forced us to look at our content. Number one, bring in some experts that know how to virtually design programs for virtual specifically. But it really made us also make sure to Susie's point earlier, make sure that you bring them back with engagement tools, annotation, polls, breaks. Oh my gosh, breaks are so important. I remember we went a stretch for like 2 hours once for the on Zoom for a section of a training, and like people's faces, like continuously people shutting off their cameras because they couldn't take it anymore. But it was all a learning experiment, right? We didn't know what we were doing. But that definitely is taken into account now when moving forward. If a program is going to be permanently virtual, we make sure that we look at the content very closely because it has to be different.
Can I just comment?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah. So I think just to pick up on that really excellent point, I think, when you're doing in-person training, right, there's this expectation of, 110% readiness to go, like to quote unquote, bring everybody in. And I think one of the learnings of the virtual environment has been sometimes you just have to go at like 60% or 70% and also not be afraid to fail, figure it out on your way along. And to the point about design, like for those of you who are managers, don't raise your hand, but like think about the compensation and the tenure on your team. Like who is centered on your team as a learning and development leader? It's, oftentimes the facilitators and the coaches, or that's where you're paying the big ticket item for vendors. And I think one of the trends we're going to see is that design is going to, trump in some ways facilitation, because as good as your facilitators are, when they're sitting in that little Zoom square, right, in their house, it's really the design. And I say this as somebody who does a lot of facilitation, but started off on the design side. Like it's really the design that has carried the programs and made sure that people are zooming in versus zooming out. And that's something we probably need to rethink as an industry as well.
Yeah, I like that. No, that's awesome. So I want to pivoting a little bit away from our hybrid discussion and come back to a theme that I know has come up over the years and is still just as important now, maybe even more important. And that's this idea that the better development programs out there are the ones that align well to the strategies of our company and the C-level leaders. And I know talking with our panelists ahead of time definitely still seems to ring true. And I want to start with Susie a little bit. Can you talk about some of the best practices you have developed, and you've got a good relationship with your CEO, and talk about how you've been able to really make your development programs better by doing that? Okay.
Well, actually, our fifth generation owner of the bank got up and was trying to say, how do we do 3 states, 11 locations, which is nothing compared to what you're talking about. But how do you pull all these diverse locations in, and how do we focus and move in the same direction? And he started with a picture of our lake, one of our lakes with all the boats, and these boats just going different directions. And he said, that's kind of what we're like right now. You're setting goals all over the place. What are they connected to? And he said what his goal was for us was to go from those boats going all those different directions to like a college rowing team. And it just showed that smooth, sleek, everybody heading that direction. And that visual that he used that was his goal for us. And then he said, how do we do that? We do that around our strategic priorities. So if profitable growth is one of them, everybody should know. Digital transformation is one of them. Customer experience is one of them. And talent retention and development is one of them. I know those. Part of the reason I know those is once he gave us that plan to hook onto our strategic priorities, I incorporate it into every training I do. And what are we addressing? Which strategic priority are we addressing by your learning today? Well, obviously, talent development and retention would be on every one because you're here learning. The other piece he recommended was, what are your company values? And ours spell out ALLCO: authenticity, lifelong learning, living graciously, be courageous, and take ownership. I also incorporate that into the training I do, and I give them little quizzes and stupid prizes if they can get it, just for fun, to say, the teacher and me's coming out, we're gonna have a little quiz on our strategic priorities, we're gonna have a quiz on our values. Because how can people in your company help you reach those strategic priorities if they don't know what they are? But sadly, there are people on executive teams that couldn't tell you their strategic priorities. So he recommended we bring those to the surface in every opportunity, every meeting, every training, that we mention those and let the lowest paid employee in your company know how they contribute to getting you there. So that was one of the things that I felt like hooking it in, giving us that visual of those people rowing together. And the other piece of that was, if the CEO and president has goals, then that executive team cascades off of that. And those executives' direct reports cascade off of that. And that's everybody then eventually hooks into helping each other. And that's how we get rowing in the same direction. So I felt like he put a metaphor out there for us that we can picture, and that I think dignifies every single employee in the company. You all contribute. And so saying, I don't need to know that, just the executives do. No, every person in the company should know your strategic priorities and your values. And some would say your mission. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. Great. Going down the panel, Kirsten, what would you add, and how do you?
Well, I love what you said, Susie. A couple things. First of all, are you a Zach Brown Band fan?
Mm-hmm.
And do you know the song, We're All in the Same Boat, Fishing Out of the Same Hole?
Yeah.
That's
That'd be
what
good
his
walk-on
walk-up
music.
music, exactly. We're thinking the same thing. Yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're fishing out of the same hole.
That's awesome.
And yeah, I think that's a good one for your company. totally agree. What are those strategic priorities? How is learning linking into that? And we do the same thing of like, start with the success principles of MetLife. What are our expectations of our leaders, and linking in whatever it is that we're talking about. If we're talking about coaching, making our leaders better coaches, well, which one of those leader expectations is this linked to? How is this going to help you meet those expectations is critical. So we follow a similar approach.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a ton to add. I think it definitely starts with leadership, 100%. They have to definitely translate what their the strategic initiatives, and then, but you're right, to both of your points, it's the responsibility of every employee. It's not just leadership, but I think it starts with them. I think that's the number one takeaway. They have to be really transparent, and learning has to have a strategic standing within the organization, or it's never going to work, right? So I think that's just utmost importance there.
Thanks, Jamie.
Just a couple quick thoughts. I think the first thing is get back to what always works, right? So like storytelling, emotional intelligence. Heard a great example from Allco of storytelling, right, with the boats. And, you know, we're all going to remember that because stories are powerful. They were powerful before the pandemic. They're powerful now. Well, I noticed you never talk about Iowa in the wintertime, only the summertime. So we'll leave that for later. But, you know, storytelling has always worked. And I think that's a real call to action. The second is safety first, both physical safety. And I think as learning and development leaders, we're on the leading edge of trying to figure out what safety and equity looks like in this hybrid environment when you have, you know, regions of the world that are shut down, other regions of the world that are like eager to travel yesterday. And how do you create consistent experience all the way down to like, how do you make sure your participants don't get stuck in the wrong country, you know, because they test positive. And psychological safety, right? Like going the extra mile, both for your team and your learners, to make sure that people are engaged and are feeling resilient, that you're checking in with them, that you're working overtime on inclusion for your team, because it's very easy to feel excluded and isolated at this time. I mean, I'll just finish with one tip that I got from someone on my team. She said, if you want to have a more inclusive environment or be a more inclusive leader, then every time you want to make a statement about somebody, turn it into a question. You know, I wonder why so-and-so is off, you know, camera versus like, why is so-and-so always off camera, right? Like, so just really changing the tone by asking a question versus making a statement, I think is something that we can all do to make our teams more inclusive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Love coming back to those good concepts. So love to check in with the group. We have several minutes left of our session. What questions do we have from the audience for our panelists related to what you've heard or something you would like to dig into? All right. This is the interactive part. All right. More coffee from the group. Yes, please.
Yeah, one of the things, great thoughts, by the way, because one of the challenges that we're having that hasn't been mentioned is really the great resignation and staffing crisis. And that's really impacting training for our banks.
Oh, yeah. Would you mind? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the tests.
Perfect.
All right.
Perfect.
One of the challenges that we're having is really around the Great Resignation and the staffing crisis, and training and learning and development. I feel like at times this past year and during the pandemic has really taken a back seat because of staffing and taking care of clients. So we've really struggled in a lot of areas to just get people into even virtual environments, as you all have discussed. What are the things you're seeing or you're hearing about organizations doing to help just mitigate that and provide good learning and development in the midst of the Great Resignation?
One of the things our company did is we looked at our performance evaluation. We found out about 99% hated it. And the supervisors hated that it was the 0 to 5 ranking. You rank yourself, I rank you. We found out that performance review was really a challenge. So we switched to check-in meetings and stay interviews. And when someone appears to be looking and we get a sense of that, we have a stay interview with them and sit down and talk about, when was the last time you thought about leaving? And try to mitigate that a little bit and talk about when we have a stay interview, we want you to stay. So that was a little shift from that. We also know that our younger employees really value, they want to be active right away, but they want flexibility. They want to be able to work at home. They want purpose, and they want continuous feedback compared to my generation, which no news is good news. If you want to meet with me, I'm in trouble. They are continually asking for that. So we're thinking of the new ones we hire and saying, and they also tell us they will trade salary for development opportunities, whether it's licensures, certifications. A lot of people said they came to our company because of Fierce Conversations Training and People Skills, which is our behavior styles program. So many of them just said, I had a better job, but you do much more with learning and development and helping me advance. I will say the stay interview format is out there. There are all kinds of ways to use that, but I do think when you have a sense to sit down and, what the first question is when you come to work each morning, what do you look most forward to doing? But that question about when was the last time you thought about leaving? And one of the questions is, what do I do as a supervisor that causes problems for you? What gets in your way? And a lot of times you and I know people leave because of their boss. There's a relationship issue. I don't see any path. And sometimes we have people who have great potential who leave us for other opportunities because they're in a certain division and their boss is 40 years old. They're thinking, well, that's the only job I could get. They're too young. I'm out of here. So we try to paint a picture of we're a broad company. There are all kinds of departments. So maybe painting some career pathways, the stay interviews, being on top of when somebody seems unhappy, I think is one way to do it. Not that we also haven't lost people we wish we hadn't.
I think the honest answer is it's really hard, and we're going to have to figure it out. I mean, I don't think, like, just by show of hands, if you're willing to be honest, like, how many people work for a company? I know, Kristen, you mentioned this. I'm the same way, where you have a specific mandate around being in the office a certain number of days. Okay. I mean, so if you're in that kind of company already, like, you've struck the match, right, on this fire of this great resignation, right? Because you told people 5 years ago, okay, you only had to come in 3 days a week. You could be home 2, you'd probably get a standing ovation. And now you tell people you have to be in 3 or 2 days, you get resignations and pushback. And what's changed is the job market, right? We've gone from about 5% jobs completely virtual to about 25%. And, like, our economists estimate there's probably 2 open roles at least for everybody who's searching. And so people have a lot of options. Like, it's a time of the employee. And so I think the most honest answer to your question is it's going to be really hard. We're going to have to figure it out. I think it's incumbent on us who are on the front lines, like, to get our new hire programs more streamlined and more ready and more agile to absorb people that are coming in, to help our organizations understand how to get the most out of people more quickly. And then to the point about leadership, I think leadership really matters more than ever. And it's probably the biggest area where companies underinvest. Like, I coach so many people inside of my organization and privately who are super excited about their promotion and getting very little in the way of, like, customized personal support for that transition. And that's really sad for them and their new role and their success. And it's even harder for their teams. And then the final piece is, I think the virtual environment has levelized opportunity. So that person who always wanted to facilitate or maybe was behind the scenes now wants to come front stage a little bit, or vice versa. There's so many opportunities now because it really is all hands on deck. So how do you leverage that to really engage your teams and make sure that people are seeing the opportunity?
I'd love to add on there too, to your point, Bernie, around there's so many options now. And I'm definitely one of those candidates who actually left a month ago for another job because I actually live in New Jersey, but I took a job in New York City. I would have never considered a New York City job pre-pandemic, but it's only because I don't need to go to the office every single week. So those geographical locations, it's less of a factor because I can go into the New York office once a week and it's manageable. And I also have 2 young kids. So the flexibility piece is huge. And I think that a lot of other people are feeling that as well, particularly for parents. And then I'll just add on to the internal mobility piece that you mentioned, Bernie. I think making other roles within the organization more attractive and bringing those departments together. And a way to do that is through learning programs. And that's what NBCU is doing right now. That's one of the top priorities of the CEO, is to make sure we're bringing those connections across businesses and retaining people that way. So at least they stay within the company instead of going external.
Great, Carrie.
No, I'll add in there too. So I think that makes a ton of sense, and I love the transparency. I also think there's a lot of things outside of our control, right? Like your example of the where I am geographically. However, there are some things within our control, within the learning and development space. And one thing that MetLife is doing is really democratizing learning and really putting an investment in a career marketplace. So not necessarily the jobs that are out there, but what can we do to enhance people's skills? What opportunities can we give people to practice on the job, these skills that they're looking for the next opportunity out there? So for instance, I can go out and post a project in this marketplace to say, look, maybe I'm a software developer. I'm totally spent. I don't have any more time. I need to develop the software. These are the skills that I need. Anyone within MetLife can look at that project and put their hand up and volunteer for that project to practice those skills. And really that adds to their internal resume, right? And their external, so that they're able to develop themselves, continue to stay engaged. This has been a huge turning point, I think, for MetLife. To show people that you can stay engaged and grow yourself, not only through formal learning, but democratizing learning through this career marketplace.
Wow. Sounds like what do the logistics look like on something like that? I'm just curious.
Boy.
What it's been. It must be hard. I mean, I love that concept. Kind of reminds me of some things Google did and other innovators, but to engage that many people on ideas.
We use it. I mean, I use it for pilot participants too. Like if you're piloting a program to get feedback from people, and it's another way to provide equity. I don't know about you all, but sometimes you get the same people, the same nominations over and over again for programs. This is a way everybody has access.
Yeah.
If you want to participate, put your hand up. And if your qualifications can speak for you and that you meet the need, you're in, not just because your manager is your sponsor.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Great question. And what other questions do we have in the audience? All right, great. So I do have a follow-up question. And Bernie, I'm just curious, you brought up mindset. I know that's something you spoke at this conference, but just emotional intelligence and mindset. And as we're talking about all these changes we're going through, and certainly I think each of us in the room are probably struggling with that, right? How do we change the mindset of what we do and the value we bring and the programs we have? And so I don't know if you want to come back to that, like, how is that showing up for you? What are some, suggestions or thoughts you have for this group here? Kind of put you on the spot around, adjusting our mindset, kind of rethinking that, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one thing is that, you have to have empathy for your participants, right? Like Zoom fatigue is very, very real. And there's a lot of, science behind behind the anxiety it creates, behind the unnatural way of communicating that it sets you up for. And so I think it's really thinking about different ways to allow your participants to engage. Like, yes, the camera off is very frustrating for all of us, and it feels rude sometimes for us as a facilitator, but it's about shifting your mindset to think about, can you use text chats? Can you use other ways of breakout rooms, like other ways of giving people a break from just being on the screen? The most delightful reaction I get these days is when I call somebody on the phone and they're like, "Oh, you want to talk on the phone?" That's great. That's really exciting. The other thing that I have sort of used personally, which was an article in the New York Times. It was developed by some psychologists about at Stanford, and they basically said when you're thinking about like stress in your life, right? They have this 3-step process called name it, claim it, and reframe it. Maybe some of you have heard about this already. And so the idea is we all walk around, and if you run into anybody in the elevator and you ask them how you doing, they're like, I'm super busy or I'm super stressed. Like those are the 2 answers that you usually get, but neither really tells you a lot about what people are stressed about, what people are upset about. And so they really encourage you, number one, to like name what your stress is. So like for me, at the beginning of the pandemic, like I'm not afraid to admit, like I was very scared to get COVID. Like I'm a very social person. I'm like a 30 extrovert, and I knew COVID was like the most isolating and frankly scary. I mean, they were building a field hospital in New York City, right? Like scary thing you could focus on. And so I think just number one, naming it gave you some ownership back over the anxiety. The second piece is to claim it. And that's where you kind of take the anxiety and you use it as fuel, as motivation to do something different. And I said, all right, I can do everything I can to keep from getting COVID, but there's a chance I'm going to get it. So I'm going to work on the rest of my health. I'm going to take that commuting time and start riding my bike every morning. I'm going to start working with a nutritionist that's covered by my health insurance, right? I'm going to do all these things to just try and get in better shape so that if I do get COVID, I'm starting from a better level. And then that leads to the reframe it, which is the change in behaviors. We're actually doing something about the anxiety. And so look, I'm not trying to minimize the mental health challenges that always existed and have been exacerbated by the pandemic, but I think for the things that are causing stress and anxiety at work and in personal life on a regular basis, at least I found this sort of 3-step process to be very motivating because you get to get in touch with your actual feelings. You get to own why they're important, which is very validating. And then that validation turns into motivation to change your behaviors.
Awesome. Thank you.
You mentioned mindset. One of our top leaders thinks that the answer to every issue we're having is training. Well, they weren't trained. You got to send them to training. And training, I'm the trainer saying it's not always the answer. And someone framed it for me too, where they said, is it a skill set issue? Yes, training. Or is it mindset? So it's skill set versus mindset. And so if we have people who are avoiding conflict, avoiding tough conversations all the time, they have the skill set. We've taught them 7 steps, less than 60 seconds. Here's how you could confront that issue. They've been trained, they have the tool. They have the mindset that they are avoiding it because it's uncomfortable. And so I think evaluating that versus thinking training's the answer to everything. They weren't trained well enough. And I take that personally because sometimes it is they have the training, they don't have the mindset, they don't have the will, whatever. So
Yeah, that's very good. Kirsten, Jamie, any comments on that? Yep, Jamie.
It's so funny. Training was the blame for a lot of things during the pandemic. I will say, I feel like we absorbed a lot of the employee stress when their teams weren't performing the way that they were. So I completely, that resonates with me. I think it's really also just to add on to what you were saying, Bernie, around psychological safety, not just for as facilitators, but as managers as well. I know that it's really tough to create it's gotten a little bit better now, but initially I'm like, I'm in the worst mental state probably that I ever have been in, during the beginning of the pandemic. Most people are. And I don't want to share my feelings over a screen. I think that was the biggest struggle for a lot of people. You just don't disclose the same level of feelings that you would with a person when they're in front of you. But we brought in a bunch of mental health experts who just gave us tips and tricks. And a lot of the time, I think much of it was, well, when we get back in person, this will be solved. But I think a lot of the tips and tricks have been carried over into post-pandemic life, which I think is a really good advantage. As much as it was such a struggle, I think that that's one of the silver linings to the pandemic is we're much more aware of our mental state now. And I think we should continue to keep that folded into our programs and trainings and coaching moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you. Kirsten, closing comments there?
just meeting learners where they're at, I think is a theme that I've heard on the panel. Even the war in Ukraine, we have facilities in Ukraine, and I think maybe several years ago it would have just been, yes, this exists, and let's put it to the side. Now it's highlighting them, right? Like what we're talking to our general manager in Ukraine, we're making sure that every single one of those employees is safe and that their families are safe. And the training is not on their deck right now, right? Like that's not something that they're participating in. That will be there when they get back. But meeting learners, no matter where they're at, and making sure that they're comfortable in what's in their surroundings. Yeah.
Powerful. Probably a good way of trying to resolve some of the challenges on the Great Resignation, right? Kind of earn credibility from people. Good. Well, it's been enlightening. Any closing comments or questions before we wrap up? All right, great. Well, I want to thank each and every one of you, and our panelists will be here obviously through the rest of the day and hopefully through tomorrow. So please get a chance to meet with them at break and lunch. So thank you guys very much. So round of applause.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, and I shoved most of my coffee, which I really need.
Good.
Okay.
Too much soup.
All right.
Just
Thank you, Bob. Sorry, I was like, for some reason 8 to 9. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Oh, yeah, no. No, I should have, yeah.
All right. Okay, everybody, let's go ahead and we're going to move right on to our next session, if that's all right. Awesome. Michael?
Let's move on to our next session, please.
Quick introduction. All right, let's get started here in about 5 seconds, if you don't mind. Wrap up and wonderful. All right. I really, I loved the engagement here. Thank you guys. Love to see everybody connecting, and we have our next presenter ready to go. So I don't know about you, but I know whenever I'm working on projects, you know, there's number of times where I'm working on something that involve people from across the company, and I can't imagine how much value that I would get, my team would get, if we could just sort of understand what are people thinking, what's some of the information out there that would really be helpful, and get to introduce our next presenter. Is it Mike or Michael? All right, Michael comes to us from Bank of America, where he is a lead for the Academy, and he is involved with a program he's going to talk about, I assume, but really gathering feedback and the voices of the team members. So I'm really excited to hear about the case study you're presenting and learn from you as a best practice leader for sure. So please welcome Mike Leonard. Thank you.
Good morning. Did everybody get a chance to stretch If you haven't, go ahead and stand up and just stretch a little bit. It's been a long run, and looking forward to spending some time with you this morning. Let's see. So I represent the Academy at Bank of America. I'm really honored to be with you today and to talk a little bit about how we gather teammate feedback and how we're using that feedback to transform the learning experience for our teammates. It's been quite the journey, and we'll start here. So high touch, high tech experiences, right? This is one of our priorities. And so how do we do that? Like, let's talk a little bit about what high touch means from a feedback perspective. We reach out to teammates during a program. If it's 2 weeks or longer, we're going to reach out to them halfway through their program. We ping them at post with survey feedback. And then once they're enrolled for 60 days, we revisit them again. And also at 60 days, we reach out to their manager and we say, hey, manager, how did we do? And that really becomes the focus point of what we're trying to accomplish with these folks, right? Is how are we doing in getting you ready for your role? We'll talk about some key metrics that we look at and some of the results we've been able to get as we go forward. Another part of this is closing the loop. And I will tell you, this was probably the most controversial piece of engagement that we did when we rolled out our feedback program. If a teammate indicates to us that they're struggling, either through a low score or an alert in terms of language that they use, our analytics will pick it up and it'll send a note to their academy manager who represents them during their training and works with them. And that academy manager is charged with reaching out to them and checking in with them and seeing if they're okay, and then providing the necessary support and means to bring them into the curve and make sure that they continue to be productive throughout the training program. Controversial with our HR teams, because the last thing you want to do is be reaching out to a teammate about feedback, because what is it about feedback that we always assume when we're completing it? It is what? It's not, though, is it? It's not anonymous. It really isn't. We're all reading it. We're all sharing it. We're all making decisions based on it. The teammate thinks it's anonymous, and therefore it's safe, and I can say whatever I want, and they do. The good news is that when we reach out to them, knock wood, we have not had one complaint. Matter of fact, they're surprised, and they feel taken care of. High touch. Third piece, role owner sessions. What does that even mean? The people who own the roles that we prepare teammates for, they live on this feedback. Now, they did not in the beginning. We'll talk a little bit about where we were and then where we went. They live on this feedback. It's important to have high touch with the role owners. We own the feedback. My team, the experience management team, owns the feedback for the academy. If we do nothing with it, we've just spent a lot of money to gather words that no one's ever going to use. So we engage with the role owners on a monthly basis and work with them and start highlighting the feedback, the trends that we're seeing, to have them start to understand where they need to look to make change. And that model continues to evolve. Before it all started, we were like this guy, just kind of peeking over, and everything was okay. We're good. Thumbs up, just keep on rocking and rolling. Here's the opportunity we had. The academy at the time was 8 line of business academies preparing teammates for client-facing roles. Everybody did their own thing. If you were in this academy, you had one survey that had 20 questions. If you were in this one, you had 10 questions. There was no synergy of data. No one really knew what was going on. We knew we were doing well anecdotally through the data. What we were missing was, how are we doing collectively? And are we really getting the job done for our teammates? Are we really preparing teammates for their role? And that's the difference. So all of these different things here gave us a really inconsistent approach, and we really needed to bring it in under one roof and start to look at it. And that's what we did. We launched it in December of 2019 to a lot of fanfare. We're really excited. And then we all know what happened in March of 2020. Thank goodness we did this when we did. I will tell you, we were able to understand and react very quickly to the changes. We were moving over 100,000 teammates from in-person roles to virtual roles and working with our clients in a whole new different way. We had technical challenges. We had teammate challenges. We had all kinds of challenges taking place. This enabled us to pivot pretty quick and start to address some of the opportunities we had. One of the big ones was we went into our analytics and we flagged, if you mentioned anything about illness, so I'm sick, I'm ill, virus, COVID, COVID-19, whatever word they were using for the day for the virus and the pandemic, endemic, all of those words we put into our analytics module, and we were able to threat alert those so we could see if teammates were struggling. Good news, they weren't. They were actually pretty happy with the way we were handling things. But if teammates were struggling, we could connect them quickly to the resources and support folks they needed internally to help them with that. That, for us, really was a game changer. It started to set the bar, and we started to think really differently not only about how we were collecting data, but how we were looking at it and how we were going to use it. It was almost fortuitous that it happened that way. We knew we had a good resource, but we really didn't test it. And 4 months later, we were forced to test it, and we did well. Do we crack the code? No, I'm going to show you some results. We have a ways to go. The good news is we're on the path, and that's what makes it most exciting. We measure 3 things. Likelihood to recommend Bank of America is a great place to work. Overall sat with the program. That's the one we all hang our hats on, right? How are we doing? How's our program doing? Are we doing good? Team excels, yes, we are. And the third one, and the one that's becoming most important to us, is role preparation. And if you think about it from an academy perspective at the Bank of America, that's what our job is, right? To prepare teammates for role. So pretty cool stuff. So this is what we measure. Which one do you think is the business's most favorite one of the 3? The first one? Why do you think the first one is the best one? Take a guess. Yeah, and it tends to score the highest. Why? Well, if it's a new role teammate, they're really excited about joining our company. So we very rarely get little complaints there. And OSAT, we tend to do very well there. We'll look at role prep in a couple of minutes. Oh, I was supposed to ask you a question before this. We're all trainers, right? Have you ever met anyone that's gone through a program who didn't want more hands-on training, longer training? Like, could I just train for like 6 months? Or process and structure, the way we deliver it. And I have a couple quotes up there from teammates. This is actual verbatim from some of our trainings. So I wasn't surprised by this, but a lot of folks were. Matter of fact, it created a lot of consternation because we give a lot of hands-on training in our learning programs. We're providing a variety of different ways they can do that. I'll show you a slide here in a minute. And tomorrow you'll hear from one of my peers about what we're doing technologically. So it wasn't surprising. The opportunity was they were only telling us one thing. We want more of it. More hands-on. Well, what does that mean? You know, depending on your role and where you are, hands-on training can mean a lot of different things. You have to engage with technology. You have to talk to teammates. You have to use internal systems and processes. You have to talk to your clients. So we had no idea what this really meant. It just kept surfacing as a topic. And the same thing with more time. I mean, you only have X amount of time. You can only do so much with the time you have. So I think this is challenging our thinking long-term and how we're going to approach some things. So three things, 3 tall bars that came up through the work that we're doing. This is where we're going. So when you think about what we did, we started adding more ways for teammates to expand their skill set and be better prepared for the role. And you can see here, we added call libraries where they can listen because, you know, it's one thing to learn and pretend on a call. It's another thing to listen how people are doing it in real life and what it's supposed to sound like. So we have over 400 calls in a call library teammates can access and learn how to interact better just through listening. We have ACEs on demand that replicates our internal systems and processes where teammates can go ahead and learn how to process not only the easy day-to-day transactions, but the more complex transactions. We introduced iCoach, which is a conversation simulator that uses artificial intelligence and reacts to the way your voice works and then gives you feedback and coaching so that you can go ahead and improve. And then lastly, we were just excited to introduce, and Mike Wynn, my peer, will talk about this tomorrow, virtual reality, providing an immersive learning experience. Now, what makes this unique is that they get this as part of their program, but it's portable. It goes with them. So when they get to their destination role and they need to practice, they can just go to these resources and practice. We have right now VR headsets in over 4,000 of our financial centers, right, Mike? So teammates can pick up a virtual reality headset now and practice having client interactions. One way that we're using the feedback to make change. We talked a little bit about the role owners. We gather them, like I said, monthly to really talk them through what we're seeing in analytics. So we talk a lot, like I talk a lot about data, but when we're talking about data here in the context of this case study, we're talking about teammates and listening to them and trying to understand what they're saying. So analytics becomes key for us, so we can surface some of these tall bars. And then we meet with the role owners, and it's a give and take. What are you seeing in the data? What are your teammates saying? What are the action steps that you're taking to move the bar on your programs? And there are a lot of programs. We have over 100 programs in flight right now. So we can't, right? You'll boil the ocean if you try to tackle this at a macro level. So you really have to start diving in and understanding where are your opportunities amongst your programs, and then bring that to bear in an incremental process so that you're not trying to boil the ocean, for lack of a better word. So the key drivers. I'm particularly proud of this. This is our improvement slide. Like, how'd we do? We're doing well. You can see our likelihood to recommend in 2020, and at the beginning of the pandemic was right around 88.3. We moved it higher. We raised it 4 points. OSAT, really productive, 5.7. If you think about it, this is in a pandemic environment where we're teaching teammates from home. And I mean, wherever they sat, that's where they were learning. They were logging in and doing remote learning like everybody else was in the room for the last 2 years. And role preparation, we've actually been able to move. And you can see here why role prep is rapidly becoming like our metric of choice. Because teammates are telling us, you're doing a fantastic job. You're doing a great job getting me ready. And I really like the program. I just don't feel like I'm ready. Now, look, we've all been there, right? New role. Some of us in the room have new roles. We probably don't feel like we're ready for those, right? That's normal. The question becomes, and I think where we're starting to challenge our thinking is, what's it going to take to move that one? So this metric has become the one now that we roll up to the director of the academy at Bank of America. He sees this number. It's a really uncomfortable number. And that's a good thing, right? That's where growth is. That's where change is. So it's okay to be uncomfortable with a number. What we need to understand is what's driving that number, what's behind that number, and what do we need to do to move the dial and have our teammates feeling more confident. Good news is I checked this morning, hold on. Year to date, and I'm gonna brag here, but just on role prep. The other numbers are comparative, but role prep is now holding at 82 year to date across the academy. And why is that? It's through the incremental changes we're making, and it's through the technology investment that Mike Wynn's team does. Is it the secret sauce? No, I don't think we're there yet. I'll be honest with you. We're getting close. In 2020, we just looked at, so we wanted to know how we're doing with our tall bars, and it really wasn't a key metric because how do you devise, hands-on training and break that down? But what we did look at is that we went back and we looked at all the data for 2020 and 2021, and we said, we just looked at the mentions. So what was the percentage of teammates who commented on a survey that they mentioned one of these topics? And you can see here across the board, we've been able to make inroads. So we're reducing the number of mentions, and by reducing the number of mentions, anecdotally, we know we're getting there. What's really cool is some of the work that we've done to revise our surveys this year to get some better data, but this is telling us that we're on the right track. One of our this is just a quick case study in our home loans area on how we're using the feedback. So they launched a program last June, and the OSAT with the program was a 60. That raised a lot of eyebrows. It was a new to roll program. It was like, oh. What they did though is we pulled up with them really quick. We pulled an analytics set for them. We started parsing it out, and really what teammates just wanted is they wanted more calls in a call library. Like they just weren't comfortable. They didn't know how to talk to people. One of the questions we ask now with their 60-day enroll, we ask them, how comfortable are you having client conversations? We never asked that question. But that's what we prepare them to do. But we're not asking the question. So we are now. And then we launched some ACES simulators for them, and you can see the progression over the integration as we continue to learn. And this is the thing. It's not a listen, one and done. It's a listen and implement and innovate. Listen, implement, and innovate. It's a cycle. It's ongoing. All of our programs get touched, I think, once a year. One of the things we're able to do, and this is the part that, like, if you asked me, say, Mike, what gets you most excited about the work that you do? It's this. We were able to actually did a study because we measure the client experience and we measure the employee experience as they go through the academy, which is just really a snapshot in time, right? It's usually the first part of their journey, or if they're getting promoted to a role, it's the next part of their journey. Well, we put those two together, and what we were able to figure out is there's a direct correlation between a teammate satisfaction with the academy program and the impact of their client satisfaction scores. We were actually able to pull them together. So, and I think it was mentioned up on the panel too. So what we're looking at doing now is taking it to the next level and going, well, what if we could look at the employee sat with their academy experience in the program, and we look at role prep, and we pull in the client satisfaction data. And then what if we start pulling in performance data and start to get a really good picture of how that teammate's doing, say maybe their first 60 to 90 days enrolled. We ping them at 60, but maybe 60 to 90 days. Now we start to understand where our gaps are, and we can really start to look at this a little bit more strategically in terms of where are teammates struggling, right? So if you look at a product set and say they're struggling with deposit products, right? Well, we can go back and analyze that and figure out like where do we need to make some changes with deposit products, for example. So the next piece of that is now looking at the 60-day feedback. That's the painful one, right? The end of the program, everybody's happy. They don't know what they don't know. They like the program. They thought it was great. And then at 60 days, they know what they don't know. And I will tell you, they are not embarrassed to tell us where we dropped the ball. The thing is, right, it's a journey. And so we're focusing this year on role prep, and then we're migrating to the 60-day look at the end of the year. What have we learned? Where are we? We understand our teammates better than we ever have before. They're telling us every day what they're looking to do and what they want us to be able to do on their behalf. It's informing innovation. We went from a standard, so another lesson learned, because we all like the pain in terms of like, what did you learn? Well, what we learned is we gave too much leeway to the lines of business on the questions they could ask, because this was a hard sell bringing them under one roof, where before they owned the data. Now my team owns the data and we share the data. And that can really make you panicky if you have a program that's not doing really well, right? So we had to be, kid gloves and bring them in. So we moved to this year, literally in March, we just rolled out a brand new standardized question set across the academy space. And we were able to do that because we had data. Like they couldn't argue, like before they could argue with us. Some of our initial surveys, like when we were building the initial set of surveys, like one of the questions they wanted to ask was, please rate the quality of your lunch. Lunch was great. I can't do my job, but I'll take those free lunches all day long. So we had to move away from that and get a little bit more definitive with our question set and really starting to have a common language across the academy space that we measure the teammate experience so we can listen better. And what's really cool about what we're learning now is that with our reset questions, we're asking them, hey, what kind of hands-on training did you get that you liked? And what didn't you get that you needed? And now we're under each of these topics, we're starting to populate subtopics. So now where they used to just say more hands-on training, they're telling they want more ACES simulators, or they tell us they want more real-world experience, or they tell us they want, and what do we take that information, right? We work with the role owners, we work with Mike's team, and we start figuring out how we're going to incorporate those things to give them a better experience. The data is telling us now early enough, from my perspective, and again, I'm just going to say it's indicating, I don't have any hard facts to put to it right now. What the data is telling us is the way we're delivering learning today to prepare teammates for role is going to continue to evolve. I think we heard it earlier, right, in the panel discussion, that the pandemic has reset the stage for us. And this is a great opportunity for us to capitalize on it. I think for us, that's, what does that look like? I honestly don't know. I think the way we're doing it today is effective. I'm not sold that it's the best way, nor it's the right way, and I think our teammates are telling us that. And as we continue to evolve and our workforce continues to evolve, I think the way we prepare and deliver teammates to the business is going to evolve. It has to. So they're telling us that. We're working on it. We've got a lot of great things going on. From my lens, though, what it's going to look like 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now, I don't know. I'm excited to find out. I can tell you this, it's not going to look like it does today. And all of us will be the people that will get it there, which is kind of cool too. 5 things a program should have. This is Mike's list. You might have some cooler stuff, but this is just mine, again, based in like lessons learned. Measure experience, not things. We used to have questions. Please rate your overall satisfaction with the following 5 things. Content, your facilitator, the room. Well, those are all important. Where do you think we scored on those? Great, loved it. Content's fantastic. Room was great. I don't feel prepared for my job. Right, that's it. So measure the experience. How you experience the content is different than how good was the content. The content could be great. These slides could be great. They're not, they're good. How you experience them is the difference, right? How you experience The learning process is going to be different. That's what you have to measure. So we ask a lot more touchy-feely questions, and we don't ask any OSAT questions, except for the one big one. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to give me a 95 on it, there's not a lot I can do with that. And that was the question I posed. Well, everyone loves that question. Yeah, because you're scoring 90 on it. So why are we going to ask the question we know the answer to? Let's ask the one we don't. Let's challenge our thinking. Let's get uncomfortable. Role prep. Really uncomfortable. Make sure you have the ability to aggregate and analyze data. There's a lot of resources out there that can help you do this. There's a lot of vendors that do this. We're fortunate to work with a great vendor. The ability to analyze and aggregate that data starts to give you the tall bars that you need to address, and allows you opportunities to dig down and figure it out. If you're not talking to your teammates or your employees as they go through training, start. Close the loop was a game changer for us. When a teammate's struggling and they don't feel comfortable in raising it to the facilitator or their academy manager, and they share it in feedback and they get reached out to, it tells them you're listening. And that's been the biggest game changer for us. And we don't do that many. Like, we don't do, like, I think last year, out of 28,000 responses we got from the line of business, we reached out to maybe 1,400 teammates. But for those 1,400 teammates, game changer. Know what you want to measure? It's not the lunch. Get deep. We consult a lot with the line of business now. We do a lot of ad hoc work in addition to our managed program surveys, which is what I'm talking about today. But when we're doing the ad hoc work, I'm asking them, what is it you want to learn? Well, we just want to know how satisfied they are. With what? This piece of content. Well, what is it about that content? Like, drill down. What is it about the content you really want to know? Were they satisfied with it? They're going to tell you they are. What is it that the content is supposed to provide for them? What's the experience they're supposed to have with that content? That's the question you want to answer. And lastly, support the teams who consume the data with a core routine. It's in the beginning when we started doing it, the roll-on sessions, it felt like accountability. And it wasn't meant to be accountability, but it felt like it because no one ever talked to them about the results before. And now you're calling me into a meeting for an hour and asking me to talk about my results. And we're like, yeah, because we want to help you. So on my team, my data and analytics lead, Shireen Kadir, she's fantastic. She meets with them. She always comes in with a bunch of questions. Hey, I saw this. What did you see? What do you think about this? What's this saying over here? I noticed this. So it's more of a collaboration. And they come in with, here are the 4 things we're seeing. Here's what we're working on. And now what we're doing is if they improve a program, the day they launch it, we put a pin on the calendar. And we start isolating that program. And we start watching the progression. And that's what's enabling us to move the dial. Our analytics continue to evolve. This year we're revamping the analytics package because we have all new questions. So the way we measure it is changing a little bit. The good news with all of that is we're pulling it together in a way where we're getting subtopics, but we're almost at the point now where if teammates are saying hands-on training by, I'd say, June or July, if I can make it happen, if I can will it to happen, we'll be able to say, well, out of all the teammates that are mentioning hands-on training, here are your 2 or 3 programs where it's most prevalent. We're basically going to give them the answers to the test. We're not quite there because it takes a long time to kind of build that analytics model, but we are moving in that direction. So how cool will that be? They wake up, they go to the dashboard. Oh, everybody wants hands-on training. Oh, wait, it's only these 2 programs. We can fix that. So that's where we're at. I'm really happy to share that with you. I hope you found some enjoyment in that or some nuggets that you'll be able to take away. And I'm more than willing. Did I breach my time? Oh, I didn't. I'm good. I have some time left to answer some really awesome questions from all of you. And I promise you, I won't have all the answers, but I'll do my best. This way. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Good question. So really funny though, right? Funny story. So when we started off with this, everybody was like losing their minds because the response rate for surveys went from like 98% to like 30%. How we gather it today is we send them a personalized email to their email box at the preferred time, and it's just an invitation to complete, the survey. And I'll address your 60-day question. So like they're losing their minds. Well, we used to get 90%. And I go, yeah, because, basically you were holding them hostage, right? You wouldn't let them leave the training room until they completed their survey. Like, who does that? And I did it. I was a facilitator for 15 years. You could not leave the room until I got your paper. I didn't care if anything was on it. Just turn it in. I have to fax 15 of these to somebody somewhere. Your information will go into the great abyss and someone will read it, normally me, right after you're done. So that was a big opportunity. The reality of it is 30% response rate on an emailed invitation survey is world-class. We are setting the bar. 60-day, we average around 18%. What's important, and this is the coaching I would provide, it's not about the number of survey responses you get. It's about sample. Do you have a statistically valid sample size? And that's what we're coaching our businesses on, especially new ones that we onboard, because they're like, 30%. My boss is never going to stand for that. Yeah, they will. It's okay, because it's statistically valid. The teammates who want to give you feedback will. The ones who don't, won't. And you know what? That's okay. It's not mandatory. Does that help? Yeah, the 60 days painful for us too. And so what we've done too, to accommodate for that, because we used to look at things on a monthly basis, it's really not fair to the business either, because you could have one bad program that would blow up your scores for the month, and that's not fair to them. We use a 3-month roll. And that gets the 60-day sample size to where it becomes a little bit more relevant for us. And that's another reason why we're not focusing on it right yet, because we want to make sure it's fair to the business. Go ahead. Nope, you first. There you go. Either one. You kind of were like at the same time. It was a very close finish.
Very excited group. So, like everybody loves to run the training and to build the training and all that, but nobody seems to want to collect and process the metrics. So Can you get into a little bit what is the process? Because even when we have the data, I find that we struggle to analyze it, to report it out in a good dashboard, and to get people focused on that. So how did you guys approach that within your team?
Yeah, so good question. Thank you. It starts at the top. The director of the academy gets all the results. So it starts there. So the fact that the academy, John Jordan, the director of the Academy of Bank of America, sees those results every month for all of his academy line of business partners sets the stage, because those academy executives were pinging me going, hey, talk to us about that. So I think it definitely starts from the top down in the messaging. This is things we're going to be looking at. In terms of how we organize, my team is organized around the data. That's our job, is to make sure that the dashboards are relevant, that the teammates are able to get the access to the data that they want to see. So this year we revised we actually created more dashboards. So our program design folks and role owners have a much different dashboard than, say, the executives do. And then the key to it really, and I've mentioned it, is the role owner meetings. You've got to bring these folks in and talk about the data. This is going to sound really crass, but I'm just going to say it anyway. You can't leave them to their own devices. You can't just let them consume the data on their own. There has to be a support structure and conversation happening around it, and coaching them on where to look to really help them start to understand what needs to change. And what we're starting to find is they really like the role owner sessions. In the beginning, not so much, felt like you were checking up on me. Now they know, because we're going to support them. So my team's a very small team. It's me and 5 directs that sort of bring it all together for all of our academy partners. So at the end of the day, it's really about engagement, right? Bringing the people in, and let's just talk about what's going on in your business and what you're seeing. You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Okay. So really great stuff. And I couldn't feel like we're further away from being where you are right now. So I'm a little bit I wish we were there. But the thing that I can anticipate, if we had this data, you mentioned about the correlation to productivity. Can you speak a little bit more about how, because I think the challenge is I always get productivity is very, could be subjective, if it's operational, if it's,
Right.
So how, especially if they're newer, if these are newer people, how are you measuring productivity? At what cadence, how long are they here, type of thing?
So in the productivity segment, it's really interesting, because we're bumping up against some paradigms, and that's what makes the work really cool, is because we're breaking down some silos, right? we prepare you for roll, and then you go out, and then we measure your productivity. But the reality of it is, the academy, you have a vested interest in how that teammate does once they get into role. And so the question for us is, that's why we said on 60-day, we felt 90-day was a little too far removed. We felt 60 we could get away with, because we had asked permission to email everybody at 60 days because they're they're at work, and now you're surveying them again. We're like, yeah, we're going to do it. So I think part of that was, is bumping up against those paradigms. And we're just now like beginning a lot of those dialogues. I think, but when we compare, and what we're looking at is against their incumbents, previous incumbents, right? So it's how you position your story, basically, right? So we're not going to, at the end of the day, do I really care about how they're doing in the field? Yes, of course I do. But what I really want to know is, compared to the cohorts that went 6 months ago, how are these folks doing productive-wise? Are we basically creating a better workforce, a better product for the business? And if you couch it that way, I think you'll find that people will be more willing to give you access to the productivity data versus, we want to see how your folks are doing. It's really just to understand, are we really, affecting the game? Is it easy? I said this before, no, we're a very big company, and it takes a lot of conversations to make things happen sometimes. And especially when you start sort of treading into other people's space. What sells them, though, is when you start looking at the story arc of, we're looking at this, we're looking at their role preparedness, we're looking at what they're doing in production, we're looking at client sat, because that's going to tell us a story. I think we're at the beginning of our teammate experience. Like, our organization does an annual engagement survey. I'm sure many of your organizations do those too. That's separate. We don't get involved with that. We're not about that. What we do want to do is we want to pulse check more once they're in role. We're not quite there yet. We're not ready. But I anticipate us getting there. Did that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Make sure I have this thing on. No, it's one of the challenges. So I think, that makes a lot of sense comparative, to the previous cohorts and just getting a baseline. And the experience thing, I think, is actually beautiful. That's the most important piece of it. What's the experience been?
Yeah. Look, you'll know you're doing it the right way when people start getting nervous. And getting anxious about it. Like, if I'm not making people feel uncomfortable, then we're not really raising the bar for them, are we? We're just kind of looking at data. And who wants to do that? That's boring. The numbers are the numbers. When you start digging in, it's good stuff. Hi.
It sounds like most of your academies are role-based focused. Is there an element or a space for capabilities, mindset?
Yes, we're working on it. So here's where we're at. Up until last year, the Academy at Bank of America primarily supported all of our client-facing and consumer-facing roles. So people that go out every day and work with our clients. Late last year, the Academy's evolved. We are now an enterprise organization. So we're actually in the process now of onboarding what I would call non-client, non-role-facing roles. And that's a whole new different survey. So for us, it's sort of like a reset. We're going back to the basics, and we're going to be focusing on that. There's also a lot of work going on internally around mindset, around skill-based things. And so we're in the learning process, and we're developing a lot of that content right now. I would encourage you to reach out to me in like 3 to 6 months, and I can probably share a little bit more, but we're developing a lot of that right now.
Sounds good, because that's actually where we started with our academies, is in that space. So we should connect.
Yeah.
I'll just take, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
So with this use case here, and you were measuring the experience, I'm curious to know the cohorts that you had prior when you were doing measurements. Did you have the same experience? Did you have the VR headsets? Did you have the simulated conversations? Or did that design strategy change?
So we're talking about this one?
Yes.
Yeah, so they had some.
Okay.
They didn't have enough. And so the teammates were like, they were just not happy right from the beginning, didn't feel like they were getting what they were getting. And so then the good news is we had the resources. I don't think Mike would know better than I do. I don't think we're quite there yet with VR, with the home loan space. This is a brand new program, but we are there with the conversation library and the ACEs. At the end of the day, people just want to know how to do their jobs. In this case, they weren't being able to get there. So the VR continues to expand. He's on the panel tomorrow morning. I'm sure he'll share a lot more details. So
yeah,
not quite there with VR, but yeah, all the other ones. And you can see, look, we all like to share a success story, right? I've got many. This was one though that really highlights just how quickly you can affect change.
Yeah.
Within a program. When you look at the Academy en masse and the number of teammates that we run through our program, like bumping that number for role prep, it's going to take some time. It's because there's over 100 programs that need to be modified.
Right. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
I'll just carry on the flow here. I have a couple of questions. First, I wanted to find out, since they're role-based, it's all good stuff. Like, what is the qualification to be part of the academy versus not be part of the academy? And also, do you measure people who don't go through the training programs to the academy and do a comparative analysis? So how effective that is?
Yes, so for all of our, so like I said, up until last year, all of our client-facing teammates came through the academy. That was required. So if you're a line of business academy, your teammates came through the academy. Our other lines of business, like our tech and operations folks, our CAO group, our CFO group, none of those teammates came through their academy. They had their own program, so they weren't in scope. Here's a reality check though, right? As of late last year, they are now in scope, and so they'll be coming through. So there really was no qualifications. It was really, if you were in a client-facing role, you were coming through an academy program. And the academy was built to protect teammates and make sure that they were ready versus just kind of doing it ad hoc and throwing them to the wolves. I know I'm at time, so I just want to be respectful of time. It's like 9:50. Am I good for another question, or should I stop here? It's not, I just, okay. Well, I'm more than happy to chat with you all later, or you can certainly connect with me offline. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I appreciate it.
Great. That was awesome. Thank you very much. And that actual session is a good reminder. And so speaking of surveys and feedback, on your sheet, right in front of you is this colored survey. So this is really good and useful information. This is the stuff that Shireen and a few of us that are conference advisors use to help inform us of what are the kinds of sessions that really resonated. You know, how should we build the next one? So definitely take some time and as you go, because I find sometimes I'll wait till the last day and I'm like, oh crap, what was that session? But so yeah, as you work through and comments come to you, please do what you can. And I promise you, we're not going to lock the room and ask for this as you leave. So with that said, anything else you want to mention, Sheree? Oh yeah. Come on, bud. You bet. Do you need the laptop here?
Yeah.
Or that one?
You can use the mic down there.
I'll use
It's okay. Yeah. That way we can keep moving.
Oh, okay, great. So the next presenter, someone, I want to make sure, is it Aaron? Aaron? All right, wonderful. First time I'm meeting him. So this gentleman is here from Visa. And when I was looking at his bio and thinking of his resume, what a rich amount of background. You've worked for multiple companies, obviously been with Visa since 2014. But prior, you've got experiences from Dell, Cisco, worked at Chase Manhattan and Citibank, but currently with Visa since 2014. So you must be like 80 years old because you got all this experience. I love it. And he currently leads the sales and leadership and learning development program. And he comes here with another case study from Visa. So please join me in welcoming Aaron, excuse me.
Yeah, it's always great to come after B of A, right? Our roots are from B of A. Our founders came from B of A, and personally, my first mortgage was from B of A. So simpatico with B of A. Thank you so much. So I'm Aaron. I look after learning and development for Visa for the sales organization. So it's about 850 sales folks across North America. I'm gonna start by just saying, when you tell somebody you work at Visa, you always get those two questions, right? One is, what's the best Visa card out there? And can you lower my interest rate? And I'll honestly say, for example, I can't play favorites, but I will say, I'll give you the tips. I'll give you my 2 cents. So if you're carrying a Visa card and it says, I don't know if you can see me, but if it says Infinite on the card, somewhere above the Visa logo, now you're all going to pull out your Visa cards, right? That's probably the card that has the best value in terms of rewards and discounts and everything. The next tier down is Signature, and the one below that is Classic. So if you're carrying an Infinite Visa card, you're getting the best rewards, whether you're B of A, whether you're Citi, whether you're Chase. So you're in good shape. In terms of lowering your interest rate, I wish I could wave a magic wand, but unfortunately I can't. But I will say, take advantage of Visa's free service called LifeLock. If you haven't already seen it, or if you haven't already used it, use it. It's a free service. What it does is it monitors your credit report or your credit, and it helps prevent identity theft. Really big in this world, right? It definitely helped me. It can also help you to freeze your credit reports, and I encourage each of you to do that from time to time. And the third thing it does is it goes into the dark web and sees if your credit information is being used. So LifeLock, free service, Visa. That's my advertisement for today. I hope that was a little helpful. In terms of what we're going to talk about today, this was sort of just one of those aha moments, right? It's that classic 80-20. You're sitting there and you realize we need to get back to basics. We're spending 80% of our time dealing with internal stuff and only 20% of our time in front of clients. And that honestly just needed to be reversed. So we needed to be really intentional about driving face time with our customers. And that's what this discussion is going to be about today. I have one more favorite tip. I'll share that with you about Visa. And that is, if any of you are traveling overseas, and hopefully you are as the pandemic eases, always pay if they give you a choice to pay your card in local currency or in the home currency, hopefully the home currency is here, always pay in your local currency. Because let Visa, and if you choose to, MasterCard, or whoever other card you use, do the exchange rate. We always have the best exchange rate, believe me. I was in Puerto Vallarta a few weeks ago, and at the hotel I was checking out, and they said, hey, do you want to pay in US dollars, right? Or do you want to just pay with your Visa card in local currency? The thing about it is you can't make that, that exchange rate in your head, and you typically will opt to pay in US dollars. Always pay in local currency. When I came back from Puerto Vallarta and I looked at my bill, the difference in that bill was almost 30%. And so it really makes a difference between using your card and letting Visa or MasterCard make that exchange rate for you. All right, so hopefully those tips are helpful. I'm going to talk a little bit about going back to basics. So, as I said, the real aha moment for us was, let's reverse this 80-20. Let's see what we can do to be much more client-facing and spend a lot less time dealing with our internal stuff. So we anchored on sort of three things. We anchored on, and this was really based on a client engagement that we had done, based on knowledge, networking, and skills. And if you think about it, we wanted our client-facing team members to be much more generalists, and to be more FaceTime with our clients. They really needed to kind of understand our business. Now, this is a really basic thing to say, but what I mean by that is they needed to be able to, frankly, whiteboard a transaction from beginning to end, understand authorization, clearing, settlement, disputes, chargebacks. And the basic tenet was you didn't want them have to keep running back to subject matter experts to get an answer that a client asked. You wanted them to be able to sit in front of a client and really be consultative, right? We all want that. Otherwise, it's kind of like the shoe salesman that has to keep running back to the back of the shoe store and bring back new shoes. You don't want that with your client-facing team. The second thing was around networking. We're a relatively small company, if you think about it. We're 20,000 strong worldwide. And so networking is huge for us. And it turned out that finding stuff at Visa was like a treasure hunt. And we wanted to make it easier and provide navigation tools for our sales force to be able to get stuff easier without having to spend all morning and pulling out your hair trying to find where stuff is and where it's hidden. And the third thing is we really wanted our teams to be better at speaking our client